By working really hard. I think people can do a lot more in a shorter amount of time than possible. And that's probably even more true for somebody my age than somebody much younger.
It was very public of what happened toward that end.
Lots of media under the spotlight.
So what did you learn from it?
A lot learned about what being in the spotlight means. Previously, it had been entirely positive, and that was the first major negative thing. Obviously, I have my own personal opinions around a lot of the dishonesty of the reporting, but it's in the past, it doesn't really matter. Speak was kind of a slow burn at first. It took us several years to find PMS. Since then, we have grown quite rapidly, but also quite steadily, and have doubled by all metrics every year for the past 4 or 5 years.
Do you feel like Speak is the life's work that you're devoting to, or do you feel there's something else afterwards too?
I think it's...
Welcome to Stories, a show where we share conversation with founders shaping societies and cultures. My name is Jonathan. Today, I have the privilege to invite this incredible serial entrepreneur. He first made national headlines in America and in Taiwan before he was even a teenager, winning Washington State's Engineering and Science Fair. That led him to become one of the youngest participants in the Intel's competition. Later on, he went on to University of Washington, graduating with 3.5 degrees at just the age of 16. Then he went on to Stanford to study PhD in neuroscience and dropped out because of Peter Thiel's inaugural 20 under 20, or what we now know as the Thiel Fellowship. He has devoted the better part of his life in the last decades or so into making education accessible to everyone. Today, he has co-founded one of the largest language learning apps called Speak. He's a co-founder and CTO, and after 50 million downloads in 40 countries entered later, he has impacted so many different lives so that they can speak English easier at home. And today, I have the privilege to speak with Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the kind introduction.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. And Andrew, when I look at your life stories, you have amassed so much achievement in such a short period of time. You're only in your early 30s, but it feels like a lifetime's over already, right? You've done so much since you were a kid. You have played in so many different roles, whether you're a student, a son, a brother, a child prodigy, and a college or a grad school dropout per se. You're a Thiel Fellow, not just any Thiel Fellow, the very first class Thiel Fellow. And now you're a co-founder, CTO, and a husband. But what I'm most interested in is your role as a swimmer. So walk me through, what was it like at the University of Washington, after a whole day of jumping in between buildings, going to classes and lab works to finally get a chance to dive into the pool and be done with the day?
That's funny. I think that having a very sort of competitive streak growing up, swimming was kind of an outlet for that. And when I started college and, I started getting busy with all of that schoolwork, I stopped really doing it competitively and more for recreation. I regret to say that I don't really swim that much anymore. It's something that I definitely want to get back into. But it's always been, I think, something where it felt like it was just me against me. And it was a way for me to push myself and to, really set a goal and then try to smash it and then do that again and again, very systematically. So yeah, it's always been very meaningful.
Do you feel like swimming was a huge part of where your competitive mindset comes in?
Yeah, I think it was definitely one of the outlets there. I was good at it. So, it was fun.
I think you were humble, man. You were top 4 butterfly 100 yards.
When I was young. That was a long time ago now.
What was it like hanging out with Kyle, Sean, and Owen back in the day?
Oh my God, you've done your research. I mean, it was fun and very competitive, right? I think it was great to have an environment where there were people that were very, very close to you in ability and that you were really trying really hard to beat, and they were trying their best to beat you as well. And yeah, I think, it's something that, maybe not swimming exactly, but I would love my future children to have some sort of experience like that.
Absolutely. Can you tell me about what it was like doing homeschool, in the early 2000s? Because I think you and your brother, Patrick, you both did, and both of you had the strong desire, for just being curious about anything. So what was it like having the parents being so supportive in that environment and essentially encourage y'all to just try whatever you're interested in?
The older I've gotten, the more perspective I've had on how sort of crazy what my parents did was. It was really a special situation that they sacrificed a lot for in hindsight. And I think at the time it felt like a very natural path for me personally because I didn't really know any alternative. And I just knew that I was really bored in school. And it wasn't, fulfilling. I was causing trouble. So the homeschooling route that they custom made was really just the best way, I think, for me to learn fast, be like a sponge, absorb knowledge, which is something that I've always really enjoyed. And yeah, I think like going from that to starting college at 12 was also objectively a pretty unusual experience. But again, I think that, many people have weird childhoods. It was so formative in a lot of the ways that I look at the world and in a lot of the sort of personal philosophies that I've developed around how quickly people can actually learn things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you feel like at those time when you were in it, it was just a regular day? But even though now looking back, and even the folks around you back then, they might have felt, oh, that's a little bit different. But how did you and Patrick at the time take it?
Yeah, I would say that, there was like maybe the recognition that, we're way younger than everyone else around us. This is maybe kind of a unusual thing to be doing. But I think also everybody kind of knows that the traditional schooling route is absolutely not optimized for learning things well and fast. That's just not the point, right? And the cool thing, I think, is that a lot more people now, especially with AI tutors and a lot of these new models, are starting to realize that, oh yeah, you can learn things comprehensively to the depth of your own curiosity 100 times faster than I thought was possible, right? That's pretty amazing.
So I learned that when you were growing up, is not just you were really great at reading, memorizing, but also just learning any subjects. You also actually had the chance to learn about all the video edits and even writing books with your brother. Also feels like, okay, was that just your childhood? But you did play a lot of video games growing up too.
A lot.
So like, how is it possible to fit that many things in a 24-hour day?
I think that something my parents did a really good job of is giving us just access to opportunities. We took a lot of different types of lessons in just a huge breadth of subjects. Pottery.
Oh, wow.
Clay wheeling. I remember at some point taking a dance class even, right? There's just like whatever I think I found intellectually interesting, my parents would try their best to provide some sort of outlet for that, for me to discover my own passions. And again, this is like a very privileged position, right? Like most people, almost nobody has access to that. And I think that environment really allowed me to, flourish.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing a little bit of your parents' attitude and I guess how were they able to foster that environment? Because I can imagine being homeschooled, the parents do have to spend a lot of time with you all indoor in your home in a real estate. And so what they had to do on a day-to-day basis is to spend the time with you to make sure that, you're not getting into troubles.
Well, I think it changed over time a little bit. So initially they may have been spending more time personally teaching and hiring tutors and setting up a day-to-day sort of class program. At some point, we also joined this sort of cooperative, like a co-op for other gifted students, where a lot of these parents who were professors, lawyers, professionals, came together and held ad hoc classes and would hire their own teachers every few weeks. So I think that was like a more flexible ad hoc system where we got some sort of like, physical FaceTime in a real classroom with more people. So the exact mechanics of it evolved over time, but I think the main idea was really like, let's just provide us with really the like huge breadth of access to opportunity and then just let them learn as fast as they want, which was fundamentally, I think, the thing that was lacking in the sort of regular public school system.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting because I would have imagined, for your parents to move to Seattle when you were just 4 years old, and I can imagine the system they grew up in Taiwan versus America is very different. But it sounds like they sort of blend into the American education system and beliefs fairly easily, and was very open to trying different kinds of ideas. I do want to talk a little bit about your first rodeo with the State Engineering and Science Fair in Washington. I read that you actually only got to the lab in 2003 in January, and the competition was in April. And you basically placed second and won a bunch of awards and went on to the Intel Engineering and Science Fair in Ohio. How was it possible that in 3-4 months, very short period, and when you were only, 12 years old, you were able to do so many things?
I guess by working really hard. I mean, I think people can do a lot more in a shorter amount of time than possible. And that's probably even more true for, somebody my age than somebody much younger. Yeah, I mean, definitely kind of crazy in hindsight when you put it like that.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, oh, wow, that's 3 months. What am I doing in a quarter? That's incredible. Yeah. So I think that was really the first time you made national headlines. So what was some of the crazier things that came out of, basically being in front of the camera at such a young age?
I would say that it became normalized pretty quickly, right? Like, I think it was sort of weird being in the spotlight maybe for the first several times. And then just through having more reps, it became more normalized. So I'm very used to talking about the story now, and I've told it to many people. And I think it's been a chance for self-reflection as well. And also thinking about sort of, my own future, my own family. Super interesting, sort of fodder for discussion.
Absolutely. So you then went on to UW. You didn't just only finish three degrees and minor. You actually accomplished close to 300 credit hours, which is insane for any human being.
I didn't take any summers off.
Oh, you really didn't? There was no summer break, no winter breaks?
No, I think it was only possible to do that, just the sheer number of like class credits. It was on the quarter system at the University of Washington. If I took basically the full course load every single quarter, including the summer. So I didn't take any summers off.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I was doing research during the summers as well.
So how instrumental were those professors, faculty, and staff, and the students and the lab coworkers you had back in the days to help you and sort of educate and grow you out of the sort of the age gap?
Yeah, huge. I mean, I had a bunch of professors and mentors in college that I think recognized that, hey, this is pretty unusual, but also pretty promising. And they really went above and beyond to even do things like make an exception and let me work in their lab and provide me the sort of mentorship that I needed. That was absolutely a huge part of it.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's probably very fortunate that these professors were very open to those ideas as well, just like your parents did.
Yeah. And I think the overall philosophy of just kind of selflessly helping was, obviously so kind. And I think that I see a lot of that in sort of the Silicon Valley technology ecosystem ethos of it's not a zero-sum game, right? Everybody is helping each other over the long term without necessarily any expectation of like a short-term sort of return, right? I think that these things have a tendency to pay themselves back, good karma, whatever you want to call it, many years down the line. And I think that, that's one of the best parts about Silicon Valley.
Totally agree. I want to fast forward a little bit to your time in Stanford, because you actually got in at 16 years old or so, and you decided to leave when Peter Thiel had his program. Can you tell us a little bit about what you feel or what you thought of when you first learned about the 20 under 20, now it's rebranded to Thiel Fellowship? What was it like when you first learned about the program?
So it was at Stanford, which was kind of in the middle of the startup ecosystem. So I think a lot of my classmates were really talking about startups, or some of them had already left to either start their own things or join things. And it was the first place where I learned that this was even possible, that startups were a thing. And I started taking some classes at the business school. There were a bunch of these joint entrepreneurship classes between the Graduate School of Business, the GSB at Stanford, and a lot of the science grad students, which I was a part of. So I think I was kind of starting to think about the future and starting to doubt that academia is where I wanted to stay for the rest of my life. So the timing was really good. And Peter Thiel announced the 20 under 20 fellowship, and it worked out. I think that was kind of my introduction into the startup scene. I knew nobody, and it was definitely like a big, scary leap, kind of just leaving grad school.
How scary was it?
Now what? It was pretty scary. I think it's a little bit also of I was pretty young, and I think I didn't know what I didn't know. So maybe, for somebody older, it would have been even scarier. And I didn't really even know anyone. But I'm still very close friends with a lot of the fellows that I met through the first few years of the Thiel Fellowship, including my current co-founder at Speak.
Absolutely.
He was a Thiel Fellow as well.
So for those who haven't heard about Thiel Fellowship, can you just walk us through what the program was, what the application was like, and what it is after you were able to be admitted to that?
Yeah, so Peter Thiel is this like super famous sort of investor, philosopher guy in Silicon Valley. He was the first angel investor in Facebook and
PayPal Mafia too.
Part of PayPal Mafia, one of the co-founders there. He had this whole sort of public philosophy around how college is not worth it. And it's basically like a credential tournament. And to put his money where his mouth is, he basically started this experimental fellowship where he would essentially find 20 people under the age of 20 and then just give them $100,000 to not go to college and instead do research, do a startup, do whatever you wanted. You just can't go to college, right? So I was in the first class of that, and it was very, very open-ended initially. There were just like no restrictions, like a lot of crazy ideas floating around.
As long as I think you're 20 years old, yeah, it's fine.
I think eventually it got a little bit more structured, and obviously it's been many years of the fellowship now. But in the early days, it was very much like the Wild West feeling, if you will. I started my first startup, had no idea what I was doing in hindsight, and there were a bunch of other people in the fellowship that, some of which I'm still very close friends with, some of which I sort of fell out of touch with, and we're working on very pie in the sky ideas. And yeah, I think like overall it was definitely life changing, right? And, it was kind of my introduction into tech.
So when you were accepted into the program, was there like a big dinner where everybody get together, or like did Peter Thiel go on stage and just talk about the program?
Yeah, there were a bunch of events like that. And once the program actually started, it was basically a 2-year program. And we would have like a bunch of the fellows self-organized and would live together. There would be, I think it was quarterly, there'd be regular dinners that were organized by the fellowship as well. Overall though, it was relatively non-structured. People were kind of expected to like be adults and do their own thing. So, some organic relationships formed out of that. And the crazy thing is that the hit rate for incredible entrepreneurs out of that fellowship has been extremely high.
Yeah.
Like maybe one of the best of any program ever. Yeah. So like,
better than like Y Combinator too.
I think maybe. Don't quote me on that. But it's been pretty incredible. Yeah.
So it does make me wonder though, you've been ahead of your peers in the same age group for such a long time. Was the Thiel Fellowship program the first time where you feel like folks inside are somewhat speaking the same language? Yeah,
there were a lot of really precocious, intelligent people. And I think that, I was very precocious once I left school and was in the real world, if you will. I think that starts to matter less. And it's more about being able to operate in the market and building a startup, which is much more meritocratic in a sense, right? You have to build a product that works, that finds product market fit, confront the realities of the market, right? There's nothing more real than that, right? It doesn't matter if you went to school really early. So I sucked at it at first. And that was like a huge sort of learning experience as well. And, obviously like things are going quite well with Speak now, but it took many years and I had a bunch of like failed startups before Speak. Yeah.
So I learned that you and your brother, Patrick, actually did a World Children's Organization back in the day when you were just, 11?
That's a lot of interest. That's right.
That still blew my mind. But the both of you actually, honed in all the video editing skills and the English sort of curriculum or with the coursework. And you actually edited a good 130 different books split into like 5 different tiers, right? A, B, C, D, E. And actually,
you do your research. Yeah.
Essentially, that's in the so-called, ed tech world, right? You were distributing those in the early 2000s in the book and video forms. So tell me about the first startup you had with Airy Labs, because I can imagine there might be some correlation in between.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think like almost every startup or sort of initiative I've done has been related to learning in some way. So clearly, very strong theme there. My first startup after I dropped out of grad school, first thing I did with the Thiel Fellowship was this educational gaming company that we were basically trying to build educational games for kids for basic sort of mathematical, essentially basic educational concepts through game-like motivation and trying to build a system around that. didn't end up finding product market fit or building a sustainable business model. But I think that the sort of common thread throughout everything that I've tried to do in my life really is how do we sort of unlock people's ability to learn quickly, build more effective tools for learning. And what's really cool is that I think that's going to be one of the most profound consequences of the current AI revolution, right? This is like arguably the most important, powerful technology that humans have ever invented. And it's going to change how we learn everything.
And you did that for a couple of years?
Yeah, I think it was probably about 2 years or so.
Yeah, it was very public of what happened toward that end.
Lots of media under the spotlight.
So what did you learn from it? Was there any sorts of shift with, I guess, your relationship with family?
I would say not really. In terms of the family relationship, I think that has always been like an origin story and a big part of my life. I think, a lot learned about what being in the spotlight means. Previously, it had been entirely positive, and that was the first major negative thing. I have my own personal opinions around a lot of the dishonesty of the reporting, but it's in the past. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
I think there were a lot of pretty specific things about building products, running organizations that I learned through the experience. It was my first startup. I had subsequent efforts as well that also failed. And I think that, that is one of the very unique things about Silicon Valley, which is that it's maybe the only place in the world by design where you can raise money, fail repeatedly, and then be given more chances. This happens all the time, right? It's like a standard feature of the ecosystem.
And I feel like that's been the same sort of ethos and the spirit that your parents sort of raised you upon, is that it's okay to try, and you don't have to do it 100% all the time, but it's more about you actually tried.
Yeah. I think the ability to make mistakes and understand that in order to succeed, you have to fail a lot. And that's actually like a necessary part of the process. I mean, I explicitly remember actually this is something that my dad always emphasized growing up. I think he had some analogy that he really liked about how Michael Jordan would always say that, like, he's missed more shots than you've ever taken, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But you got the idea.
You miss 100% of the shot you don't take.
For sure.
So I think when you were done with Airy Labs, that was around 2012, 2013-ish, and you eventually left the Thiel Fellowship program as well. And I look into it, the first 2 years of the Thiel Fellows, a lot of them are incredible, including Laura Demings and most recently Dylan from Figma.
Yeah.
Who's actually one of your investors now too.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me about, I guess, when 2016 came around. Well, first, I guess, what was it like when you first met Connor in the Thiel Fellowship program?
So Connor was 2012. So he was the year after me. And we became really good friends first and then roommates. And actually a bunch of us lived in this big house in San Francisco. And that was
That's so like a dream for a 20-year-old.
It was really cool. That was a little bit of like our college experience in a sense, where we were really, a bunch of us were sort of, around 20, like your early 20s. This was in the sort of 2014 through 2017 era. And Connor and I are very similar in many ways. And I think we bonded over a love for technology and for learning. He had sold his first flashcards app and was working on like other sort of learning and tech ideas as well. So I think philosophically, we were really aligned. And we were talking about what we wanted to build and do with our careers in the 5-year time span. And I think this was around 2015 or so. And it was becoming clear that deep learning was starting to come back. AI was starting to come back. And it was...
That was going to the Hacker House when you guys were living together.
Yeah.
So you guys actually lived together for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were roommates first. And we basically decided that we needed to drop everything and study AI and study deep learning and like fully master and like, not master, but like go deep and understand the technology, and eventually with the goal of building some sort of AI product lab, building products using this technology, because we felt like it would be the defining technology of our time. So we did this for, like a bit over a year.
So when you
like
say learn about AI, what did you all have to do?
what we did was embark on essentially this self-directed sort of study and research program. And we did a lot of things. I could talk for like hours about this, but it was a combination of taking courses, like literally sneaking into grad classes at Stanford and Berkeley, and learning about like reinforcement learning from one of the later co-founders of OpenAI, as an example, training models, writing code, reading papers, consulting with experts for help. We did that for 12 to 18 months, and then the idea for Speak came out of that. And then we started Speak in end of 2016, did Y Combinator in the beginning of 2017. And that was really like more from the technology point of view. We were basically convinced that speech models and language models would become superhuman in the 5 or 10 year range. That turned out to be a pretty good prediction. And specifically, we were convinced that language learning and achieving fluency would be totally changed, and that we could eventually build like an AI tutor that would automate a lot of what we currently need humans to do. So that's how Speak came about, right? In short.
I think we should point out that when you were in undergrad, you actually did biochemistry, chemistry, and neuroscience.
Yeah.
Minor in math, and then you did neuroscience again in PhD. None of that was programming, but I believe you actually just self-taught programming.
I didn't study CS in college, but I played a lot of video games. I'd always been interested in computers and played with computers and did sort of, like would build websites when I was 10. So I think I always had that as part of me, and then sort of learned how to code when I dropped out of grad school.
Love that. So when you and Connor first got together and talk about the Speak idea after doing all the research and prep, at the end of 2016, what was the first model like? Because what it kind of sounds like is you're basically betting on this 5-10 year trajectory that some of the tech will follow through, and you're just there waiting for the right moment to be ready.
It's funny because we were looking, like not that long ago, we were looking through some of our like initial mock-ups and ideas, and it was so different from what Speak is today, but it was still in the vein of how do we build some sort of app, some sort of automated app where it's an outlet for somebody to speak into the app.
Why was that important to you guys?
Because we felt strongly that in order to get fluent, you had to speak out loud, right? That was a very simple core of the idea. And previously, like if you wanted to become fluent, if you were serious about that, you would hire a human that you could speak out loud with. That would be expensive. It'd be hard. Most people wouldn't do it. So we wanted to basically build an app where you could do it with only the app in your own home.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have to worry about scheduling. You wouldn't have to be embarrassed about sort of making mistakes. So that was kind of the first thing that we built using just speech recognition models, which were the first models that were starting to become end-to-end deep learning. And it took us several years actually to find product market fit. The irony is that we wanted to build an AI company and do cool machine learning research and stuff. And instead, we spent the first few years just kind of grinding on product market fit. Right. And we launched the Speak app several times. It wasn't really working. And the only reason we didn't quit, frankly, is that we had just this complete belief that this future would come true, where obviously speech models were going like this, language models were going like this as well. They would become superhuman. And then this future would come to pass. We were just early.
Right. Tell us about how YC has helped in any shape or form, because I believe that's also how y'all were able to, I guess, build your first product, maybe even find your first customer, even landed your first investor too.
Yeah, we're big fans of YC, and actually still talk with our partners there to this very day. We were just talking with them a few weeks ago, actually. And I think we actually did YC sort of pre-product, and it was like a very early idea. I think they just liked us as founders.
Do you remember what y'all prepare for the video?
So the funny thing is, every year we do a whole company trip to one of our markets. And last year, during this trip, we actually played our YC video.
Oh, no way.
And it was eerie because we were saying the exact same things as we still say today.
Wow.
Right. Which is kind of proof that the North Star vision of the company has never changed. Right. That, like we're going to build this superhuman AI tutor using speech and language models. And we've never pivoted. Right. We just kind of had this view of the future and have been building toward it this entire time.
And just keep waiting for it, the right moment.
Yeah. I think like initially we did end up finding product market fit in late 2019, early 2020. I think that was probably the third launch of the Speak app. And we kind of had a lot of these hard-won learnings about specific UX, specific app design ideas, what did users want about how the course worked and what the home screen actually looked like and how on rails the experience is versus allowing the user, right? So there were like hundreds of these sort of micro design choices, plus a whole new curriculum, plus a whole new app design, plus focusing on South Korea only as our first market, teaching English. That started to work. And that was only relying on speech recognition models. So it was more of a supplemental speaking tool where a user could speak into it and start getting feedback. This was well pre-LLM. Right. So that started to work in the sense that we started getting users telling us that, hey, I've tried to learn English for the past 10 or 15 years, and I've tried everything. I've tried the private tutor, academies, classes, all of that, and none of it really stuck. I never made any progress, and now I'm a DAU of Speak, and I feel like I'm actually becoming more fluent. So that was a really cool moment. It felt like that was kind of the moment when the ball started rolling down the hill, in a sense. And then sort of fast forward to 2022, that was the LLM moment, right? That was when Whisper, OpenAI's first speech recognition model, and then when ChatGPT came out, which started the whole LLM craze. And I think that transition enabled that. I mean, that was kind of the moment we had been waiting for, right? Where now we had, in some sense, superhuman speech models and language models.
So I'm curious then, in 2022, when OpenAI essentially really gave you all this incredible boost in terms of the technical front. But in that first 6 years, you're using more or less the speech recognition, a model where I guess a lot of other tech companies might all have access to. So were there any sort of differentiation that Speak was able to make in that first 6 years?
Yeah, product. It was about product specialization and essentially, just the fundamentals of really deeply understanding our users and building a great product for them, caring a lot about the core UX loop of fast speech recognition. So there's like a whole thing around product specialization. And then we also made the decision very early on to entirely own our whole content strategy. So the way the curriculum worked, the way the lessons worked, the actual like script of the lessons, all of that was in-house and basically reinvented from the ground up for fluency. So we kind of invented something called the Speak method, which was the way that we would teach functional fluency. And essentially, we don't teach vocabulary. We don't teach like explicit grammar rules. We just teach you a pattern, and then you repeat variants of the pattern 100 times, and then you apply it in like a role play situation. And then suddenly you're kind of microfluent in a little scenario. And then you can do this for many more scenarios. But it's a much more sort of like practice-oriented way of becoming fluent in these functional scenarios. That was another big part of it. So yeah, I would say that like even today, we do a lot more custom speech models now. The team is bigger. But my overall take is that I don't really believe that much in moats, if you will. Like I think very, very few companies have true technical moats. And I think you need to really focus on the fundamentals of executing really well, out executing your competition, having a product that, is very specialized and is just the best purpose-built tool for what your users want.
So do you feel like you guys have achieved that?
I think we're in a leading position right now. I think we've sort of pioneered this new category of AI-powered language learning and had been growing really fast in a bunch of our core Asian markets. Now we're working on the US and the rest of the world, and things are going very well. It definitely feels like a pretty special moment in time where call it 95% of the technology is here with the original vision. So we're kind of like racing towards building out the vision, but we're still small. It's still early days.
Yeah, I actually had the chance to use the app, and I think the overall onboarding experience is incredible. I learned that you guys worked really hard on getting the onboarding correct. And I really like the fact that you all were able to sort of ask the users what sort of scenarios they want to use it for, right? For me, for example, I just put like, I want to improve like sales technique or whatnot. So what really impressed me the most is, while a lot of other, similar, let's say AI platforms, it does take a little bit of time to get the feedback. My experience with Speak is fairly quick, right? It's like half a second or so to a second respond time. So I'm sure in your turns, it'll be basically real time where it actually feels like you're just talking to someone. But that does make me wonder, back in 2022, when Whisper came out, how quick did you guys had to sort of implement those new APIs and new programming onto the app and essentially have another launch? I guess that would have been, Speak 4.0 at the time. Like, what was that like? Because, I can imagine you were leading all the technical talents at Speak at the time. What was it like?
I mean, we did it as quickly as we could, right? Because I think it was a moment that we had been sort of anticipating and we knew would come at some point. So in some sense, we were kind of expecting it. But in the other sense, you still have to like do all the product design work and figure out the UX and figure out how exactly it fits into your current paradigm in a way that customers actually want. Right. But, we sprinted as fast as possible. A similar thing happened the following year. So late 2023 is when GPT-4 came out. And we were one of the first companies that had early access to GPT-4.
Because OpenAI was an investor.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And that was another mad dash. It was even crazier because it was still an alpha. So there were extremely severe rate limits and alpha infrastructure. So we had to actually redesign the way that the feedback feature worked that was powered by GPT-4. Like, I think I was writing code on vacation over Christmas. It was just like a mad dash for sure. And yeah, those were the early days of LM product.
How quick was your team able to adapt to the new product?
In terms of building it, I mean, it was all hands on deck, right? And I think that it was like it felt like a very exciting and unique time. And I mean, the GPT-4 alpha probably lasted for, I think it was like 2 months, something like that. And yeah, we built a lot during that time.
And how has the user experience changed with that new adoption then back in 2023? Like, did you see any sort of spike in user growth, or was the user experience actually much better afterwards?
I would say that it was pretty transformational for the entire app experience, because it took us from previously the first version of the app that started working was basically this like supplemental speaking practice tool that just had the core speech recognition loop. So you could speak into the app and then you could get feedback on whether you said the thing, but there was no like more tutor-like feedback beyond that. And LLMs and Whisper allowed us to turn it into a more full-featured tutoring experience, right? Where you could do role plays and custom scenarios and practice having English chats with these AI models in any scenario that you wanted. And if you said something wrong, then the LLM tutor would give you feedback on how you could sound more native, tell you about your word choice, the grammatical mistake you made, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, like this is something we had kind of anticipated. So it was a bit of the next stage in the master plan, if you will. But the specifics took some iteration, just like any product development.
Right. It does make me wonder, you did mention earlier, right? In 2016, it was sort of betting in 5-10 years time, these LLM will come true in order to really fully achieve the full vision. So how important was the OpenAI partnership back in 2022 for y'all?
I think it's been huge. I think these things are almost impossible to really quantify, but we're mostly an OpenAI shop in terms of the LLMs that we use today. And we work quite closely with our team. I think language learning is just a really sort of central, exciting consumer use case on the application layer. And we've had pretty incredible growth over the past several years. And it definitely felt like there was a pretty big inflection point in late 2022.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the last few years has been doubling every year, basically. When we look back into the history, right, let's just take Netscape as an example, right? Their browser built on different operating system. They were sort of relying on that. And when, Windows come out with their own Internet Explorer, that was the end of Netscape. Before Speak, right, you're kind of relying on this core technology in OpenAI's LM. And yes, they are an investor. But if this core technology is essentially, in a way, not 100% in your control, how can you safeguard the future, essentially?
Well, so I think there's a lot of aspects to that question. Maybe let's start on the model side.
Mm-hmm.
So we're big fans of OpenAI, obviously, and we use many of their models. But we have also built fallback systems, and we do have line of sight and visibility into other types of models. Our core philosophy is that everything is very sort of product driven at Speak. The models we use, the code we write, the tools we use, all of that is in service of solving a user need and a user problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in practice, we choose the right model for the future. And in the future, we could swap it out for a different provider if we needed to, right? So I would say that not everything that is in the app needs the most cutting edge, intelligent model.
Mm-hmm.
And other labs, open source, LLMs, etc., will get you 90% of the way there. We're kind of less focused on sort of obsessing over the shiniest new model and really focused on solving fluency, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a sort of user problem. And then on the long-term product strategy side, our belief here is basically that language learning it's a really complex set of skills, right? Becoming fluent at a new language takes years, and it requires a lot of specialized software and product. There's an incredibly high ceiling for product execution here. So we think that if you're a serious language learner and you're spending 15 or 30 minutes every day trying to learn a language, maybe much more than that, you're going to want the best purpose-built tool. And that's what we want Speak to be.
Right.
That's what we're building toward, right? With the product side, with the pedagogy, with the technology. And, obviously your execution has to be super good because everything's moving so fast.
Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure the team work towards the same goal so that you have that perfect execution?
Well, that's a fundamentally hard problem. And I think everyone struggles with it. I think it gets harder and harder as the team grows. We're about 130 people now and still growing.
Across the globe.
And, this is kind of the central execution problem, right? It's like, how do you ensure that the goals are clear for everyone in the company so that you're all steering the boat in the right direction? There's no silver bullets, right? You have to communicate really well. You have to, as leaders of the company, drive everyone to focus and ruthlessly prioritize.
Since 2022, there's a lot of different technical implementations here and there. And what do you feel like the ideal use cases really is for Speak? What is the ideal user experience? And really tell us about what Speak really is.
What we're trying to build at Speak is a superhuman AI language tutor that can basically take you to fluency in any language you want as quickly as possible. What this means in practice is an app on your iPhone or Android that is filled with essentially a very personalized learning curriculum and AI language tutoring that is very interactive so that you're constantly speaking, you're following our curriculum and our content, which we design very specifically to take you to fluency as quickly as possible. And sort of the ultimate vision of the holy grail product experience here is kind of what would the best human tutor on earth for Japanese, if you're learning Japanese, be able to do. And even better than that, because there's a lot of things that computers are better at than humans. This amazing human language tutor would be able to just have a fluid conversation with you, right? Over a tutoring session, right? And sometimes they would teach you things. Sometimes they would walk you through role plays. If you made a mistake, they would use their tutor judgment to decide, oh, maybe that was a minor mistake. Let's keep going with the role play and just communicate. But if it's a severe enough mistake, which requires sort of mental model for what you understand as a tutor, I might decide to cut in and explain, right? So in general, we want to basically use all of these new LLMs, audio models, native multimodal models to solve language fluency. And I think the even larger vision beyond this is this idea that we can use AI to reinvent how people learn things.
Mm-hmm.
Languages are kind of the first stop, if you will.
Right.
It's like the beachhead.
It's an enabler.
Yeah. Language learning is, it's a huge market, obviously. And it's also so universal of a problem. But theoretically, a lot of the systems and the platforms that we're building here should be applicable not just to languages, to other types of knowledge as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when it comes to fluency, how important it really is to want to be fluent in a foreign language versus really delivering the right context to the people they're speaking to? Because what I'm thinking here is, there's a lot of great leaders in Silicon Valley too, or even in Seattle, that they might not speak 100% fluent English, but they are able to communicate what's important to the right people, to the right context. So how do you really balance between, being fluent in English, especially American English, I guess, for speak right now, versus really delivering the right context?
I think both are super important. And I agree that you can be very good at communication without being 100% fluent, right? And it kind of depends how you define fluency. But really, like one of the philosophical things that we feel very strongly about is that communication and just the ability to speak and be automatic about it is actually very different from many other aspects of fluency, like having a good accent or having good pronunciation. Like you can have really bad pronunciation, but still be very communicative, right? And we're also seeing that on the enterprise side of the business, Speak is selling, large amounts of seats to companies that care about training their managers or their frontline workers in real world skills, right? And that might be graded much more on the ability to execute on certain communication skills and less on core language proficiency. This is, there's a lot of more technical detail here, but I think the point is that all of it matters. And I think that like a superhuman tutor should be able to equally teach all of it to anyone.
If it were to be someone that's first time learning English using Speak, do you guys set any sort of expectation in terms of how far along or how much time it might take for one to really be fluent at it?
So we are working on quantifying that, and we'll have a lot more to say about this in the next few months. Maybe I'll leave it at that. But we have a lot of data internally that what we're doing with the Speak method works really well. And in one sense, it's kind of obvious, right? Because it's kind of like to learn how to swim, you need to get in the pool and swim, obviously.
You can just watch a YouTube video.
Yeah. Well, there's some people that think if you do that for many, many years, it does help. But I think it's the same idea fundamentally, where if you want to become fluent and good at this automatic skill of speaking, you just need a way to do it a lot, right? And that's what we're trying to build.
Walk me through a little bit about, I guess, how really the AI model could work as Speak. Because what I do think about is, obviously, Whisper itself is trained on, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of hours of data. And, for anything AI, right, there's data, there's compute, and the algorithm that goes along with it. So obviously, with Speak right now, with the latest funding round, you guys are very well cash prepared, any sort of AI race. But for any sort of startups who are trying to come into the AI world, does that really mean they just really need to have all the funding necessary to compete? Or how could one actually compete with very limited funding resources and, without really having access to all the data, the right compute, or even the algorithm?
Well, I've always felt like people need to focus on the fundamentals of product building. And one of the reasons that it does seem so hard to build a consumer AI company today is that it's very easy to get a lot of sort of tire kickers for cool AI products. People like to try things and like to be like in the scene. And you might even be able to make a bunch of money in the first week as a new company. But then all those users go away because there's no enduring value that you're building. There's no real product market fit. So then it's back to the fundamentals. Like you have to just solve a business problem, right? You need to solve a user problem that actually matters and not sort of over focus on the shiny new model that just came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
To be clear, I think you have to be extremely attuned to model capabilities and what the frontier is.
Right.
And like internally at Speak, for example, we have a big list of things that we want to build that are not quite possible yet, or maybe too expensive to launch at scale. And then as the frontier shifts forward, more of the things that were impossible now become possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, there's like unlocks over time. Now we can build them. Now we can sprint toward them. That's the overall model that we think about it. But I would say for new startups, it's about solving a real problem and treating models like a tool to get there. Like the orchestration of prompts, the design details and the UX details of how you actually productize.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of the main things I think where value is built. And I think you need to pick a domain where there's a high ceiling for execution and there's a lot of product specialization that's needed. I think if it's a shallow use case, then yeah, you should probably be scared that ChatGPT or Gemini might just do it and have way more distribution than you in the next year.
Absolutely. So do you guys feel like over here at Speak, you have been able to build a product where you choose a very specific topic, which is just talking fluency, and actually go extremely deep onto it? Well, how much further do you really need to go in order to make the Speak, let's say, close to an ideal app that you feel like everyone can and should use?
So, I think we've done a pretty good job so far, but I think there's still a lot to build. I think there's still years of product cycles. We basically view language learning as a very deep set of skills that needs a lot of specialized software. So it is quite a specialized sort of like vertical domain, if you will. And I would say over the next year or two, there are so many new models that are coming out that I think will directly unlock a lot of our ultimate vision here. So, that's part of why, honestly, it is the most excited I've ever been in the history of the company, which is a pretty crazy thing to say like 8 years in.
So I want to talk a little bit about the investors you have, because when I look at investors, it's like an all-star team. It's like all of them are like
great investors.
Yeah. I mean, the very first investor was Mr. Costa from Sun Microsystem, right? You have a program, you have YC, you have OpenAI.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on. Even Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn, right? Your good friend Dylan. So how were you and Connor able to convince them to invest and stuck with you guys for so long? Like, was it really believing in the vision, the product itself? Or how did you really get them to be on board?
We have always adopted the fundraising strategy at Speak of not necessarily doing like, mega rounds every few years. Speak was kind of a slow burn at first. It took us several years to find PMF.
Yep.
And then since then, we have grown actually, quite rapidly, but also quite steadily, right? And have doubled by all metrics every year for the past, 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these investors are newer. Some of them have been with us for a very long time. I think fundamentally, we believe so strongly in the fundamental vision here.
Mm-hmm.
And, thankfully, we've been able to get all these pretty amazing people to buy into the vision and feel like we're the team to do it. It does feel like we have a lot of momentum on our side right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's so important to not rest on your laurels. In the grand scheme, we're still tiny, right? There's still so much to achieve. So I definitely still feel like the enormous prize is still very much ahead of us. So there's a huge sense of urgency to execute.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at language learning app, it's, everyone must talk about Duolingo and Babbel. Previously, you sort of shared that Rosetta Stone was kind of the 1.0 language learning, and sort of Duolingo and Babbel are on the mobile side, and now it's really towards the AI version. So what's the outlook like from a competitor standpoint? That from a product and technical front, how can you safeguard and grow and essentially surpass all these competitors you have?
The way we see it is that with all this new tech, all these new models, it feels like it's now possible to build something that just wasn't possible before, right? I don't think it's a trade-off anymore between engagement and efficacy. And I think it's essentially like a fundamentally new type of product that we're trying to build here that has, I mean, I don't even know what to comp it to because this wasn't possible to build a few years ago. It's certainly not like a mobile game. So we've always really thought about how the product should work and who the competitors are as humans, right? What, again, like this thought experiment of what would the most expensive, like best human language shooter on earth be able to do? How can we achieve at least that, right? That should be like the floor of how good the theoretical speak experience is.
Mm-hmm.
And that turns out to be like a very practical, useful thing in practice to think about, product design and stuff like that. But then also there's many things that an automated AI system should be much better at than a human, right? Like it should be able to remember perfectly every single mistake you've ever made and perfectly calibrate the next lesson that it shows you to be the most effective, efficient thing at any given time. It should be able to perfectly quantify and measure your proficiency and show you that sense of progress over time. Right. These are all things that humans are actually like not very good at.
Yeah. So really looking back at all the different roles you've played, one thing that made me very curious was I actually brought something that I want to show you today. So you wrote this book a while ago.
Nice.
In English, it's called Not Just a Genius.
Yeah.
And because of it, you actually, did a lot of tours in Taiwan.
Yeah.
But what made me curious is, right now you have well over 15 million downloads and you've helped so many different people to learn language. Speak has become a very household name here in Taiwan because of the effort that your team had led by Ginger. And all the ads are working really well. Like all of our friends know what Speak is, right? And people love it too. The user experience is great. But what I'm curious is, one of your very first mentor, Dr. Bostrom, what do you think he would say if he's here?
Oh, man.
And I guess for context, you met Dr. Bostrom at a restaurant. You were only, 12 at the time, and he was reading Financial Times, and you went up to have a proper conversation with him about difference.
Well, I haven't even thought about this story in such a long time.
Yeah, I thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Well, I think that one of the patterns for all of my mentors has been in essentially doing everything in their power to give me opportunity. And I think to sort of help me feel like I don't need to take the conventional path. Right. I can just build and try to add value to the world and sort of follow my instinct in a sense. And I think that's, as Speak has grown and as I've grown as a leader, I think that is something that I've also sort of learned to trust my own pattern matching and my gut more and more. So, hopefully he would be proud of that and, just like keeping that ethos going throughout my life.
So we sort of wrap every show looking back at sort of all the different dots in your life. So do you feel like going through, in the early childhood, being in the media, having the opportunity to just go out and try and play different things, right? And, you have two amazing brothers in Patrick and Benji. And Patrick himself is an incredible person over here in San Francisco as well for the ARC Institute. So how much do you feel like your achievement and your accomplishment is attributed to your incredible hard work, throughout your life? And how much was it really just pure luck?
Oh, gosh. It was certainly both, right? I think I give a ton of credit to my parents, as I said before. I think what they did with my education and my childhood was really unique. And it was very courageous on their part. And I think that really set a lot of the foundations, perhaps, of what I consider to be personally possible, expanded that a lot. And, certainly there was a lot of hard work in there and certainly a healthy dose of luck. Yeah, it's kind of all of the above.
Yeah, it does make me think like, on the luck side, it's pretty interesting. You and Patrick growing up using flashcards to learn all different words. And that's actually what Connor did for his home.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
So I've always wondered like, was that really why you guys got along?
Yeah, we should build a flashcards feature into Speak pretty soon as well.
Oh, that should be amazing.
Good. Yeah.
So two more questions for you.
Yeah.
So, as a very successful founder yourself, right now the company is a unicorn. What do you think should be the must-have trait for a successful founder?
The key for us, I would say, was being utterly convinced of a particular vision of the future. There's never any doubt because it was so obvious, right? Like there's no room for doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, frankly, that's useful not just for being a founder. I think it's also useful for being like an investor in many ways as you sort of get later stage as a founder. Some of what you do is also like investing in company bets and new products over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having conviction over, many months, many years about where you think the world will go and then building towards that future is a big part of what it takes. I'm not going to pretend that Speak is like a huge success yet. I think we have a lot of momentum. I still sort of view us as really tiny,
mm-hmm.
frankly, and there's still so much to do, but I'm pretty pleased with our progress so far.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So for our audience, a lot of our audience are starting out or early in their entrepreneurship journey. So what sort of advice would you feel like giving to them?
I would say I would probably repeat what I said earlier, which is that the fundamentals matter more now than before. And always keep a builder mindset. I'm fundamentally a techno-optimist, right? So I believe in the power of technology to solve problems for humanity and improve the world. And
mm-hmm.
I think we need more of that
mm-hmm.
in the world. I also think it's just a lot more meaningful to wake up every morning and devote the vast majority of your day to this like important project, right? So it has to feel meaningful and important to you. And I think that if it doesn't and you don't feel ownership over the outcome, that's how you can burn out over the long term.
Right.
So I would say like choose a problem that feels important to you, that you're excited to wake up every day for,
mm-hmm.
and then focus on solving the problem directly.
So I guess Speak's 10th year is coming up next year.
That's crazy.
Insane. Do you feel like Speak is the life's work that you're devoting to, or do you feel like there's something else afterwards too?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit silly to commit to these things when you're still relatively young,
mm-hmm.
but it certainly feels like what I've been interested in my whole life, right? Which is building tools to help people learn faster and provide them more opportunity. That is a big part of my life mission.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think Speak is like very well positioned to help pull that off.
Yeah, and that's been something you've been doing since 10 years old. Love that. Right. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for the conversation. Before we wrap up here, do you feel there's anything else you want to add?
I think maybe in the context of AI and founders, right? One thing that I've just found myself thinking about a lot lately is that we need more companies, more founders that are building at the application layer,
mm-hmm.
solving problems that actually benefit humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that's like a very general statement, and I kind of already touched on this earlier, but I just really want to highly encourage more entrepreneurs to dive in here head first.
Mm-hmm. And I think right now is the best time ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap.
Thank you very
Andrew,
much.
Thank you for the time.